Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Hello, should probably mute my channel. Just had to make sure I was actually streaming and everything was working. Didn't mean for an echo there. Anyway, all right. What are we still talking about? Kind of looks a little bit like a demon dog with those eyes, just in the lighting that we have going on. Anyway, so welcome to tonight's stream. Tonight we are going to go over a bunch more books. And in fact, I think some of these are, excuse me. Some of these are, I don't know. All of them have had impact on me. I don't even know if these are favorites so much as some of the things that they helped me through or to understand, or the knowledge I took in most particularly were some of the biggest things that I maybe ever had to learn. Which is not to diminish what I went over the past few days, but when I think about some of the books here, not all, definitely the first one I'm about to talk about, they were paradigm shifting. Yesterday I went over No More Mr. Nice Guy. That was a paradigm shifter one. Whereas, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway was not a paradigm shift. It was more like some ideas and thoughts I had and already kind of knew from self-development, just in the early chapters kind of explained fully, clearly, and wrapped in a nice tight bow, and it kind of solidified the ideas behind it more than it really like taking how I looked at the world and completely altering it for good. So with that said, I think some of these books have that power to do that. I definitely think some of the ones that I'm about to talk about tonight get a little bit more philosophical. Some of them do. Not all. Whereas some of the other ones, maybe it was like, well, even in the past, I in the very first night I did this, I brought up a Confession by Leo Tolstoy. It's like, well, wrestling with the question of God is beyond philosophical, right? So, again, it's not to say that the other books weren't there, but some of these are ones that just, like, this first one is a major game changer for a lot of people, in my opinion. So I'm gonna get into it. We might as well just switch it over. When I Say No, I Feel Guilty by Dr. Manuel J. Smith. I would think that's how you pronounce his name. Could be Smythe. Kidding. You can see I purchased this book over 5 years ago. Right around the time that I had really been in the thick of it with things. The first 6 months of 2016 were just hell. I've gone into it on other streams. I don't really need to revisit it right now, but I was really seeking out answers. And this book is fantastic, absolutely fantastic, on first shifting your mindset that it's okay to stand up for what you want, and then giving you extremely practical tools to implement day to day in your life. This book is great if you are a highly agreeable person, as far as the Big Five personality test trait agreeableness, which would mean, again, if you're high in agreeableness, you would be someone who is just, let's say your friends want to do something and you want to do something too, but you never stand up for yourself and volunteer what you want to do. You always go with what they want to do. You just want there to be peace. You don't want to disagree with people, and you sacrifice and compromise yourself very often to do it. On the flip side of that, if you were super low in agreeableness, which would basically be disagreeable, you might be the kind of, again, I'm just stereotyping and using an example here. Take, what we kind of think of as like the biggest asshole boss who doesn't care about his employees, just gets whatever he wants, doesn't care about other people, yells, going in the direction of narcissism, even. It's like, there's certainly healthy disagreeableness, but I'm just trying to use extremes to really paint the picture here. Again, remember that this is all a spectrum. To say no one's really like 100% in agreeableness and no one's like 0% in agreeableness, like truly, there's certainly people at the very, very, very tail ends. But just because they're at the tail end doesn't necessarily mean they are never willing to compromise. They're just at the tail end compared to all other human beings, right? Or that they always compromise and never say anything. Of course, there's going to be some extreme cases where you have people who are just in a real bad place psychologically, that are really on the ends of a spectrum, not just there, but across all traits. But for our purposes here, let's say you're in the 60th, 50 to 60 percentile or higher in agreeableness, which would mean, you usually go with the flow, you don't want to rock the boat, all that kind of stuff. This book is the book that you really, really, really need to read. There's a problem. The problem is, this book is like the most dry, boring book that I am talking about over these 3 nights. It is not necessarily a fun read. It's very textbook. It's very, it it's a shame that maybe the author didn't have a ghostwriter or something to help um, to just make it better. It's a tough one. I'm not gonna lie. It's just like this is pretty boring, but the information is so important, so impactful, and so paradigm and life changing that you really need to read it if you struggle with this whatsoever. Like, period. If you struggle with this whatsoever, it's $7.99, the ebook version. You need to buy this book. You like, I'm not shitting you. You need to buy this book if you struggle with saying no or being assertive whatsoever. I'm gonna pull up, actually. I don't want to show it necessarily on my screen, but I did pull up the book to kind of go over the contents and dive into them a little bit more than I have been in the past few streams. At least books where I wanted to make some key points so that I could reference them and be like, oh, right. You know, on some of the others I kind of glossed over some stuff. The first part of this book really kind of lays out a general it asks some general questions. For example, is conflict inevitable? Talks about primitive survival behaviors, how we become aggressive or avoid people or things like that. Just some background information. It then gets into your assertive rights as a human being. And this is really where the paradigm shift happens, because it lays out this fundamental assertive right that all of us have. You have the right to judge your own behavior, thoughts, and emotions, and to take the responsibility for their initiation and consequences upon yourself. And it doesn't just say, oh, well, you have this right. It actually then goes into it and explains why you have that right and why that is the case, right? It's making a coherent, logical argument to get you to understand that this truly is the case. From there, it breaks down into kind of sub rights that you have. For example, you have the right to offer no reasons or excuses for justifying your behavior. If you don't want to do something, that's enough, right? And there's actually about 9 others that you have the right to do, right? But similar but different than that. And again, it goes into why this is the case. So the beginning of the book is super empowering as far as changing that perspective to get you to understand that because often this stuff, again, wherever it comes from in your past, whatever lesson you had, whatever belief you have, what story you have, so on and so forth, the title of the book is When I Say No, I Feel Guilty, right? So we are arguing that you do not have to feel guilty about this. Here's why. Here's what your rights are. Here's why you have those rights. Here's how it works. Here's how it has to work, right? And it's not just you, and it's not just the author being a dickhead or anything like that. He's actually laying out some serious arguments as to why this is the case, for you to shift how you are thinking about the world and your belief structure, to change you and get you to no longer feel guilty in the first place about this, right? Which is, if the book ended there, this would probably be worth double the price. If it's $8 on Kindle, I would pay $16 if the book ended there. Right? And again, if you ever struggled being a nice guy or something like this, and I told you that book last night was for you, this is a book you need to buy. This is a book you need to buy. The book doesn't end there. What it then does, it goes into a little bit about the so it goes into some further description of, what would you say here? Some general ideas about how to deal with specific situations that may come up in your life. And once you understand the big idea, he then gives a very practical tool to deal with that scenario. So it's not like you just had your mind changed. It's then he lays out, like, okay, if you are dealing with this kind of person, you do this. If you are dealing with this kind of situation, you do that. And here is the exact steps on how you do it. And he lays it out with like an example story and all this other kind of stuff. And I don't think that part of the book would stand alone without the previous part of the book. It should stand alone, but you do kind of unfortunately have to get the belief change from the first part of the book before you could even apply these things. But if you didn't, the stuff he lays out in this part of the book could be its own book, and I would pay double for it. Like, it sucks so hard that this book is so difficult to read, because it is fucking gold. It is absolutely, if you struggle with this at all, you just gotta buy this book. You just gotta. Like, I hope I'm emphatic enough about this to really get across what a massive deal this book is to me. The fact that it has only 857 ratings is fucking criminal. I Again, I think it's one of those things that just came out a while ago. I don't think it did it really come out in only 2011? I'd be shocked about that. But either way, like, this book should probably be read by a lot of people out there, and it should probably not be read by a lot of others, in the sense that if you already believe, let's see how to say this kindly. If you were a millennial or younger who was raised to believe that you're God's gift to the universe, you really don't need to read this book, because you're probably already a giant asshole. I'm kidding, but you don't really need to read it if you genuinely think, if you don't feel guilty, if you already know how to stand up for yourself and all that kind of stuff, if you already believe that you have a right to do that, that's fine. But a lot of people watching this, and to be fair, some people might act that way but not feel it deep down. If you feel deep down guilty or bad or whatever, whether you say no and then feel guilty, or you just can't say no and then you feel bad that you can't do it, and you feel bad that your life is at the whims of other people and you don't have control, this is a book to read. It really is. It's I wish I could praise this book more. I really do. I wish I wish I could emphasize it even more than I am. And I suppose I wish I could praise it more if it was just written in a kinder style to the reader. I think this book would be a true bestseller. I'm guessing it's not, because it's a hard read. I'm guessing a lot of people just kind of put it down. It is kind of specific as far as what it's dealing with and for who and everything, but you know, I don't know. I got a ton out of this book. This was really one of those ones that came along, and after a very long time of really trying to be very agreeable to other people, and go along with what they wanted, and not standing up for myself and all those kinds of things, uh, you know, that really hasn't been the case for the past 5 years. It doesn't mean that I'm super disagreeable. It means that if I don't want to do something, I just don't do it. Doesn't mean I can't compromise. Doesn't mean I can't, I'd like to think I have a healthy balance now, and that's the important thing. We're not trying to turn anyone into a giant asshole. We're not trying to turn anyone into that boss that I talked about at the beginning. It's not the point of this book. The point of this book is to have a healthy balance between just having any balance at all, any bit at all, where you stand up for yourself and where you go, yes, it's okay that I feel this way. It's okay that I don't like this. It's okay that I say no, and quite frankly, I don't have to fucking justify it to anyone else. If I don't like this, that's enough. My feelings are valid. And so are yours. If you're watching this, your feelings are valid. You don't need to feel guilty about saying no. If you don't like something, if you don't want to do something, you are completely justified in saying no, and you do not have to give an excuse or a reason for it. Now, I'm not saying you never give a reason. If your family said, "Hey, do you want to come over for dinner?" And let's say you're going out that night, and you already made plans. You go, "No, sorry, I already gave plans." I'm not saying just say no, stone cold, to anyone whenever you don't want to do something. But if you say, hey, someone's like, hey, do you want to go to the movies, and you're just not feeling it or something, it's like, nah, I don't think so. That's okay. Thank you though. Why not? I just don't feel like. Oh, come on. That's not a... No. I said no. I don't need to justify it. It doesn't matter if you think I should or not. It doesn't matter that you want me to, although I appreciate that. I don't want to do it tonight. I don't, for whatever reason, if I internally feel like the answer is no, then I'm not gonna do it. Other times I will. And to be fair, you might have to wrestle with something in the moment. Like, let's say it's been a while since you hung out with your friend, and they want to go to the movies, and it's like, oh shit, I actually kind of don't want to, but the friendship's important to me. I know it's been a while since we've hung out. I'm going to compromise, even though I'd probably rather not do it if that wasn't the circumstance. I value the friendship, and I want to make this effort, right? Sometimes you do have to compromise and even do things that we might otherwise not like because of the circumstance. Because if you just said no every time you didn't feel like it, especially when that was the case, then it's like, all right, well, you can do that. You're allowed to say no. That you don't have to feel guilty, but there might be repercussions that you don't want, right? So there might be repercussions, like your friends like, well, you clearly don't care about our friendship because like you never want to hang out, you never feel up to doing anything with me. Or maybe we have to have a talk about, how often can I commit to doing something with you? What kinds of things are we doing? Maybe I just really don't like going out to movies. And it's okay that I say no, that I don't. I'd rather go to a bar with you or something and just hang out for a little bit because movies aren't my thing, or just whatever the fuck it is, doesn't matter. So again, there's nuance to this, and please don't take what I'm saying as, oh, you could just go around saying no and being a giant asshole to everyone. That's not the point of this book. The point of this book is, if you are a doormat and you let other people walk all over you, we just want to take you from doormat to not doormat. That's it. So it's truly a book filled with just absolute gold, gems. The what's he call it here? Systematic skills, which are basically the very pragmatic tools you can use in real life situations. Some of these are just brilliant, because it's not always so easy to say no, because people come back and they start using different tactics on you, and these will give you tactics to fight back, basically. Or you can like get started. There's some tactics to just get started with it, and then if they come back, depending on the circumstance, there's a bunch of tools for that too. So I mean, it really covers the gamut. I would say I actually got very, very close to the end. Um, this is one that like I was basically like a chapter or two short. I did read the vast majority of the book. Um, but yeah, this was a solid book. This is a book that anyone who fits the description that I said, just buy the fucking book. Just go buy the fucking book. If you don't have the money, save up and buy the fucking book. All right, moving on. Second book. Let's talk about Stoicism. Ryan Holiday is a super smart dude. He has done some shit from a very young age that, you know, a lot of us wish we were as smart and talented as he is to accomplish that, that we could have accomplished the same things, I should say. Um, by all accounts, it seems like he is a good man as well, from what I can tell. Um, extremely just almost off the charts intelligence. The interesting thing is, when he was about 19, he read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, which I would have listed, but I'm still working my way through it as it is. That would be considered. I've read different books on Stoicism, and some not all the way to completion. One's called A Guide to the Good Life. I've read stuff by Seneca and all that. I haven't actually read through Meditations in full, but that was a massive deal for Ryan Holiday. When he read it at 19, he considers it the greatest book of all time. The interesting thing is, it's literally just Marcus Aurelius's journal. And what it is it's a journal where literally the most powerful man in the world is journaling, trying to just simply remind himself of these, very large, very big ideas, to keep himself grounded, to keep himself humble, to have great humility, to have great to do the right things, like truly the right things. He was, emperor, and I believe I heard a story that Ryan Holiday was explaining in a video where there was like a plague going through the Roman Empire or something, and like shit was bad, the economy was sinking, and Marcus Aurelius walks through the palace and starts tagging things to sell. Like, can you imagine if the US economy was fucked up? Just, you know, just say there was like, I don't know, something was going on. Maybe there was mass inflation and I don't know, gas was at like some unreasonable price or something like that. Could you imagine if the president started walking through the White House and putting little sticky notes on shit to sell? I can't. This book, The Obstacle is the Way. So anyway, let's back up. Obviously, Ryan Holiday was super inspired by Meditations and everything else he learned about Stoicism. He condensed that into this book, The Obstacle is the Way. This is the first of a number of books he's written about Stoicism. To be honest, and interestingly enough, I have my tattoos on my arm here. He has The Obstacle is the Way, and his other book, Ego is the Enemy. Ego is the Enemy is on the other one, like as reminders, and that's why I have this tattoo as a reminder. This is a message to myself. And it's about having the right mindset. The only thing we can truly control, according to the Stoics, is our thoughts and our responses and reactions. Everything else, every other circumstance that happens to us is out of our control. There's nothing we can do about it. Like, if a plague comes along, if a fucking tornado comes down and destroys the house, like, you can't control that. You can't control other people. You can't control, I don't know, that a bug came along and bit you. Like, you can try to make yourself more secure. Obviously, as a society, we've done that. We've built infrastructure. We have police. We have laws. We have uh, doors with locks on them and security systems. And we have rules and regulations about building codes so that this room doesn't collapse on my head. And of course, we are trying to limit the chaos that can affect us. And we've done a pretty good job. Between all our advances in technology, medicine, and everything else, we're living longer. We're generally safer than ever before, despite worldwide pandemics coming along. But even then, we're still relatively safe. I mean, it's not the Black Plague. Like, if you really look at like shit that really rocked the world in the past, I'm not making light of COVID-19 whatsoever, but in comparison, like, could be a lot worse. Thank God it's not. So anyway, we can't control these things, right? What you can control is your response to these things. You can change how you think, feel, etc. Easier said than done. I'm not saying it's not. Even the thing is, we're all human. Just because we have this capability doesn't mean it's not a practice. Meditation will always be a practice. You never arrive and say, I am the perfect meditator, and I never get it wrong, and I don't have to do this anymore. Right? There's no end to your practice there. There's no end to practicing Stoic philosophy. It is in this with this book, the obstacle is the way. You can see it says the timeless art of turning trials into triumphs. And so the neat thing about this book is the way he breaks it up is he has it broken up into 3 parts, and I have this one pulled up as well. Part 1 is perception, part 2 is action, part 3 is will. And there's some other things as well. But generally what he's trying to say is like, look, shit's gonna come up. You think it's getting in the way, but it's not. It actually is the way. Right? Because this shit comes up anyway. So it's not that something came up, it's your thinking about it. Thinking that it is getting in the way. And to be fair, sometimes you do have to recognize that a situation is like it's time to give up. Right? The book is not making the case that no matter what comes up in your life, that means you need to just barrel on through and get through it and past it and whatever, no matter what. That's not what's really being said. But it is, again, a mental shift to recognizing, and I'm going to tie this into trauma recovery. It's a mental shift to recognizing that you're not a victim. You are someone who needs to, or you don't have to be, and a victim of fate or circumstance or whatever. You are someone who can take it and go, okay, that's the case. What am I going to do with it? And in terms of trauma specifically, when I keep saying the idea is not to stay a victim, it's to go, like, yes, you were victimized. It's to go from victim to survivor to thriver. This is about thriving despite what happens. Right? And not getting upset about it, and really having a mindset shift of like, how can I use this to my benefit? Now, he actually goes into a lot of other things in here, Stoic Tactics, and it does all kind of wrap into the general theme, but it really is a nice intro into into Stoicism in general. Again, there's other books like I could have easily brought up A Guide to the Good Life. I forget the author of that one. It's A Guide to the Good Life. No one should be hearing my typing because I got this noise suppression thing going on now. The Ancient Art of Stoic Joy. Yes, here we go. By William B. Irvine. This is a good book. I've read this as well. Not all the way, but enough to get into it and to understand Stoicism. And again, not only have I read The Obstacle is the Way, I've also read Ego is the Enemy. Not gonna lie, I didn't think that one was that good. I thought he just was repeating himself a lot, almost like I need to get a book out. And if you read The Obstacle is the Way, I just don't think you get a lot from it. I haven't read Stillness is the Key. He has a good book as well that I think is super useful called, it's not here, I'm surprised it's not here. It's called The Daily Stoic. And so basically similar to what are those Christian books that like it gives you like a little thing to meditate on every day? If you know what I'm talking about. Like you just read this little thing every day, like a little passage, a little Bible passage, and some thoughts about it, you know, and just kind of think about it, you know? It's the same idea. It's like you just take a bite of wisdom every day. It's 365 days, just something to meditate on a little bit, think about, you know, just kind of carry with you, constant little reminder every day that takes literally a minute. I do like the Daily Stoic. I think The Obstacle the Way is something you should read prior to the Daily Stoic. You can get the Daily Stoic later on. He also has like a Daily Stoic journal, I think, or something like that, which I haven't really gotten into. I am really interested in reading his next book, which is Courage is Calling. Why is he and Fortune Favors the Brave, also known as Fortis Fortuna Adiuvat, which is in my Nexus profile, actually. Or Fortune Favors the Bold. It's kind of the same thing. Anyway, courage is one of the 4 main Stoic virtues, and it's arguable that the other 3 virtues rest on courage, and that's why he started with that virtue, and he's going to do 3 others. But Courage is Calling just came out. I do want to read that. I respect Ryan Holiday a lot. The other neat thing, if you don't want to buy this book, right? I was literally gonna read or watch this. This is Ryan Holiday, by the way. This his Daily Stoic YouTube channel. He has really good videos explaining just basic bits of Stoic wisdom, Stoic like philosophy, thoughts, etc. He's super passionate about it. The delivery of the video is fun. They all take about like 10 to 15 minutes. What is this? Oh, this one's 22. So somewhere in there between, you know, 22 is actually on the higher end, I think, for his videos. Normally they are more like, I don't know, literally 10 to 15. Most of the time I listen to stuff like that at like 1.5 speed anyway. So, you know, again, 10, 15 minutes, you can knock it out. Check out the Daily Stoic YouTube channel. There's a lot of good shit on there. It's a very quick introduction to Stoicism that can probably start getting you thinking very differently. If you like what you're hearing, then you could buy this book. I mean, I recommend the book anyway. I think it was very solid. I think Stoicism is... It's certainly having a resurgence in a lot of entrepreneurial circles, life hacker circles, people who are into self-development, you know, certainly have heard of Stoicism and are appreciating it. I don't know that it has really still broken mainstream, weirdly. It still seems not... I don't know. I'm surprised that more people in the modern age haven't picked up on it. I think it might be because it's kind of goes against I mean, as a society, we're starting to like celebrate being a victim, which I think is kind of stupid. I'm not saying it's not a good thing to empathize and help people who are victims, especially if they want help. Um, but we shouldn't ever want someone to say, "Oh, it's okay. It's because you're a victim, and there's nothing you could have done," and all that kind of stuff. It's like, no, that's not the right approach. We want to get people away from being victims, right? We absolutely recognize that they are, but we need to turn them into survivors and ideally thrivers. It's like the entire goal of what I'm talking about on this channel. It's like, if you are there, we need to get you out of there, because your life sucks when you're there. Your life sucks, right? So don't misunderstand what I'm saying there. But again, I think, again, because what it's actually saying is, at the end of the day, how you think, how you choose to respond is in your control, which goes completely against, well, this was out of your control. You were victimized, right? There's a balance there. Yes, Stoicism says things are out of your control. The only thing in your control is your response, right? But I think that's being missed. I also think a lot of people, just because the word stoic has a connotation where it's like emotionless, that's not the case. The Stoics did not like lack emotions. It was more about being in control of them, something that we all, myself included, really could probably use. And it especially is the case when you are in a rough or bad spot. Like when you're struggling, when you're depressed, when you're anxious, like, emotions are just that much more intense, right? So just checking and making sure that's going on over here, because sometimes people like to DM me. Don't want to talk in the chat. That's okay. Obstacle is the way. Yeah, I mean, it's paradigm changer for some people. Yes, I had enough of an intro to Stoicism prior to it that I don't think my life was changed forever thereafter. For some people, that might be the case, though, actually. So, again, the book is $10 or only $6 on audiobook. I wouldn't necessarily recommend the other ones, like Ego is the Enemy. Not trying to hate, just it didn't do anything for me. And to be fair, I have one client who their whole thing is reading and using that to learn, and like coaching through certain books and stuff, because they are a voracious reader. They read so much that I can't even. I can't even. Like, I literally don't know how they read this much. They are so well read. They're as well read as Ryan Holiday. If you watch his YouTube videos, he sometimes sits in his home library, and the guy runs a bookstore too in Austin, Texas. But in his home, he has like it's the size of a legit living room, and the entire thing is tons of books. He's obviously hardcover, like legit editions, not necessarily ebook reader kind of guy, because he reads and he takes notes. He has a whole system of taking notes on the books he's read. That's something that anyone should probably check out if you want to actually get something. If you want to, if at least check it out. I don't actually use it, to be fair, but when I saw what he was doing, because he uses it as a way to keep notes for research on his books, but he also does it to remember, and like he'll kind of go through and recall things that he wanted to remember, because when you read thousands of books, it's too hard to like remember everything about all of them at any given time, right? So you need refreshers and reminders, basically. He talks about his system somewhere on his channel. I've seen him do a YouTube video on it before. I'm sure it's on YouTube and findable. But yeah, the obstacle is the way. And then if you like that, the Daily Stoic, nice little daily thing to kind of check in, refresh, remind yourself of things, etc. All right. This one I have talked about a lot before on the stream, because I bring up two very important well, I bring up a few important things that he said in this book. The first one being that it doesn't really matter what your level of pain is. What matters is that you're in pain and that we need to fix that pain. Viktor Frankl survived Nazi concentration camps. His family did not. He developed a new approach to psychotherapy out of this, known as logotherapy, which at the core of his theory is the belief that man's primary motivational force is his search for meaning, or her for search, or whatever. I would agree. And I have made the case and the argument that what I'm trying to say here on this channel is that life is suffering. We know that the way and going for happiness doesn't totally make sense, because you can't always be happy, right? Like, happiness is not a long-term state. Right now, you can do things that will bring you joy temporarily, but like, let's say your family member dies. That's not like, are you striving to be happy in that moment? No, and you shouldn't be. But if you have meaning carrying you through, a purpose, something like that, it will get you through those times. It will get you through whatever you're going through. I think this theme is replicated quite a bit in Jungian philosophy and psychoanalysis and all that kind of stuff, which, you know, to be fair, there's a lot of detractors because there's not necessarily scientific evidence. Again, though, when we're kind of talking about things like this, how do you measure some of these things that we're kind of wrestling with? How do you measure, does your faith in or does your meaning, or does your faith in God, or whatever, carry you through suffering? Like, how do you quantify your suffering? Or, like, we're talking about big, deep truths, not factual information. And there's such a thing as like meta truths as well. That's like, science's job is not to literally address everything in the universe, right? So I'm about to get into a bit of Jung in a little bit, but in regards to man's search for meaning, I think it's true. I don't think that we can scientifically deduce. I mean, perhaps we could, in that we could run tests and go, well, do you feel you have a meaningful life? And then rate life satisfaction against it. And generally speaking, I think we have, and I think it's the case, you know, that people with meaning or purpose are doing better as far as metrics go of like life satisfaction, or even their status in life, you know. But that doesn't necessarily mean something is true or not. It's just like, well, in, you know, 83% of people say such and such, whatever. But nonetheless, I do think, from everything I've personally experienced, including, you know, up until past few years, a lifetime of depression, anxiety, dealing with trauma, not loving myself, all this kind of shit. As well as right now doing what I'm doing with my life and all those kinds of things, that it is the case, it's true that his theory that man's primary motivational force is a search for meaning is true, or the attainment of that meaning, or living out that meaning even as well. Even besides the bit of logotherapy and you know, his testing, by the way, his observations were what was keeping people going in literal hell, right? Like, what is it that is keeping some people alive in hell? Because if there's anything that's hell on earth, it's a Nazi concentration camp. You know, or possibly a Russian gulag, or a Chinese Uyghur camp. Um, but certainly the Nazi concentration camps are up there. And I really can't argue. But anyway, aside from logotherapy, just his story of what he went through in the concentration camps, what he learned and everything, it's something that you should probably expose yourself to if you haven't already. Because I think not enough people are really, you know, it's like we know about atrocities, but we don't really face them. Not enough of us probably face them. You know, we hear about this and it's like, oh, I have to read about someone in a Nazi concentration camp. Like, that's going to be uncomfortable. Yeah, and in the same way that, like, you might watch Schindler's List, or yeah, Schindler's List or something like that. Like, you kind of have to see what happened to be aware and to know. If you stay blind to these things, you just don't develop wisdom. Like, if you really keep yourself blind from the real horrors and atrocities, especially of the 20th century, you are being willfully blind, and you are not going to be nearly informed about what humans can do, that you will be sufficiently prepared against malevolence, and furthermore, you will likely not fully comprehend some of your choices and possibilities about how things can go wrong and all these other kinds of things. Am I saying that I think anyone is going to be thrown in a Nazi death camp anytime soon? No. But I don't think people really... It's amazing. Like, some of us can be so traumatized and see such horrible shit in the world, like, or have experienced it, yet we still don't recognize just how bad things and people can get or be. And if we did, we might be a little more hesitant and about things, a little bit more thoughtful, a little bit more well-informed, a little bit more just experienced, wise, all these other things when making choices in our lives. And that goes for a lot of different things. Otherwise you're naive. You know, and I'm not saying from there you can't draw conclusions, but you have to recognize that malevolence exists. And, like, amazingly, we seem to be losing that in this. It's weird. Like, we recognize it, but we don't recognize it could be anyone. We think it's always like the other side, and our side's good, or this or that, and it's like, if you really look and read and whatnot, there's a great book called Ordinary Men, which outlined how a bunch of normal dudes were basically kind of drafted into becoming Nazis and were put on police duty in this town in Poland, and, like, they were shooting pregnant women. They'd, like, strip them nude and shoot them in the head. And like, how do you take normal dudes who were just like a baker and a bricklayer or whatever, and like turn them into that? And you know, we don't really we don't see it in the possibility in ourselves. We think we'd all be, you know, the person hiding Jews in Nazi Germany, but that wasn't the case, you know? So if you look at this, if you see that there's a dark side, if you see that it is within you, you'll be a bit wiser. And I think this book has a dual effect in helping to explain that by showing what he went through, as well as explaining his philosophy and how to get through it and all that kind of stuff. Let's see. I understand the importance of knowing what has happened in history, but do you think by learning more about the kind of sex of people it makes us more likely to become pessimistic towards each other? It's a good question. Um, I think it certainly can be the case. And I think you have to balance it though. If all you do is study and focus on all the awful things, for example, if you watch network television like cable news and all you're doing is seeing how evil the other side is, then you're just looking at it one-sided. You're going to be pessimistic. You're going to be you're going to demonize the other side, which is what's happening right now, right? We have both sides of people, like no one talks anymore. Used to be the case that like if you were Republican or Democrat, like I'm not saying that politics was always kind. You can actually look way back in history for the past hundreds and millennia, not just like US history, like all of history. Politics has always had a brutal side of it. But, you know, we didn't outcast our neighbors for who they voted for. Like we disagreed. Or like, what? How could you do that? Or something like that. So, yeah, if you just focus on this alone. But I think the problem is, I'm not sure that enough people are truly looking at history enough. At least, and I mean, I might be stereotyping the younger generation a little bit, but like I'm shocked when I hear certain ideas coming out, um, where like I'm really shocked. There was, for example, a group in, I believe, an English university who put out some tweets like justifying the USSR and communism and saying the gulags weren't that bad and they had movie nights and like it was just a place to educate people further and get them ready to go back to, like, it was the most utter ridiculous bullshit. I can't believe people are like walking around and thinking like the hammer and sickle is something worth like actually like showing off and like I'm a proud communist. Like, really? Because have you looked at the results? I know it sounds good. Have you looked at the results? Um, I'm not saying capitalism's perfect either. I just think it's the best out of a bunch of bad solutions. But I do think that from what I can tell, a lot of this seems to be the case. Whenever I hear that people are sympathetic to some schools of thought where mass atrocities were committed, those same people usually are not big fans of history in general. They usually haven't, they thought history class was boring, they don't like to read or study about it or whatever. And then they make excuses and go, oh, well, okay, so that stuff happened, but that wasn't real communism or real whatever. And we, you know, I'm not saying that America is perfect. I'm not saying capitalism's perfect. I'm not saying our republic is perfect or anything like that. There's obviously improvements to be made, social improvements. I don't really care which side of the aisle you're on. Um, I do think that people need a more well-rounded view. I don't know that a lot of people are reading Man's Search for Meaning, and they should. I don't know that a lot of people are reading the Gulag Archipelago, and they should. You need to be aware about what humans are capable of, and it is the case where you can dip and become pessimistic and nihilistic, right? Because this is, if you want to really talk about the problem, the Buddhists have it right that life is suffering. But the worst part is that a lot of that suffering is caused by evil and malevolence, right? It's bad enough that life is suffering already, that your parents might die or something like that. It's even worse to know that you can turn on the news and read about how someone was raped downtown that night. If you live in any major city, that likely happened like literally once every few days or something like that. It'll be on the news. It's not a rape, it's a murder or something. Trigger warnings. I'm sorry that I'm bringing it up, but like these things exist. They suck. They don't just suck. They're horrific. And it's like, yeah, not only are those isolated incidents where you're seeing malevolence, then you really can look and see how some of the worst people got in power and committed such horrific, atrocious acts that they're practically unspeakable, right? It's certainly possible to go down, and depending on what you're reading and where you're at in life, maybe you shouldn't necessarily read like the Gulag Archipelago, for example. But Man's Search for Meaning, while it does outline this stuff, it does also, it's showing how to get through the worst of anything and to give hope and what to focus on and meaning and all that kind of stuff. And again, as I've been saying, how you overcome suffering and the pessimism and the nihilism and all that is to have meaning and purpose. I don't really want to unpack that because then you can get into greater metaphysical questions like, well, does God exist? Is there actual meaning and purpose? Or can there be meaning and purpose without it? Which some people think there is. I don't know that I can draw the same conclusions myself, but if it works for them and that's getting them through and is giving them some meaning and purpose with whatever their own conception of it is, then good. That's what's important. It doesn't matter that you believe what I believe. What matters is that you have meaning, purpose, so that you're not stuck down there where you're like, this is shit. Because if you really look at it on paper, like, this is shit. Like, on a certain level, yeah, if you just pause thinking about the fact that like dogs aren't shit, you know, he's awesome. Computers aren't, and all that kind of stuff. But if you like really look, do like dogs justify Nazi concentration camps or the horrors or just malevolence itself existing in a universe, in a reality of creation where free will exists? Probably not. Maybe. Dogs are pretty awesome, especially this guy. I love this guy. But I don't know if he justifies the worst suffering and malevolence just by existing. But if you then look at the bigger picture and you don't just focus on all that stuff, you don't become nihilistic. You do also look at the good. You look at how often people do just really random acts of kindness and charity and recognize, you know, most people are decent and, you know, everyone's doing the best they can. And for every horrific story you hear on the news because they don't want to talk about the good stuff because the good stuff doesn't sell, it doesn't shock, it just doesn't horrify you. There's tons of good things happening every day. And it is all meaningful. It is meaningful when, for example, we want to talk about meaning, and of course, there's bigger purpose. Like what I'm doing here is a very big purpose and meaning thing. I don't know if people can see that. Sounds like Christmas. I'm invited. Um, where did I receive this? This is an invitation to a church. They're doing a recital for like a Christmas concert. Um, at a church like 20 minutes away from here. I don't go to church, for the record, for anyone watching. I got this because I take over and out most days each week. And did you just look up as you heard your name? We got his, collar on and leash, and lately I've been putting a pack on, so he has to carry some extra tennis balls and water bottles. I'll have to post a pic in the Discord because he looks really cute with it on. And we walk a little ways away, so he gets some warm up. We get some walking in, and there's a grassy area and a bunch of houses back up to it, like their backyards, and they're fenced, but they're not like cement wall fences. They're you can see through them. It's like metal fence. And lately, I've been standing in a place because there's a tree that shades me, and if you live in Phoenix, you know that the sun is the most oppressive fucking thing in the world. Even when it's only 75 degrees out, sometimes how it's still fucking miserable. I don't get it. I know you live in Phoenix, that's why I'm just bitching right now. So I stand in the shade, and it happens to be next to this house where these little kids play in the backyard each day, and they've been coming over to the fence and talking with me and watching me. I have a chuck it to throw the ball to Oberon, and they've been asking, what's his name, and asking about him, and I've been just chatting with them, and all that kind of stuff. And then yesterday, the dad came out with the three little kids and like came over the fence, through the fence. He like opened it up and came over and introduced himself and all that kind of stuff. And apparently the kids wanted to invite me because they're going to be singing at this church after like just 2 days or whatever. And so yeah, we had this like cool little conversation. I was like, oh cool. And the guy's like, I don't know if you have a church or whatever. And I was like, I didn't totally respond to that because it's complicated. But it meant a lot, just that little interaction where these like little kids who I barely know after a few days were like, come listen to us sing, and being invited and like welcomed in. That's such a small thing that's not going to be on the news. There are things of that happening every single day, and going back to my thoughts on having a gratitude practice and choosing what you focus on. If you focus on the good, if you focus on all the things you have, if you focus on what's meaningful and brings what you're blessed with and all that, that is a buttress against. I'm getting focused. That is a buttress against what you read in these books and the knowledge that you do need to take in to make yourself wise. You need to have a well-rounded vision. You need to pull this stuff in. And it will make you a bit pessimistic and maybe even want to be a bit nihilistic, and reading it is not comfortable. But otherwise you're naive, and that's worse, right? So I would recommend here still reading this stuff so that you're wise and you see all the possibilities and you see how these things happen and what to do to not have them happen again, hopefully. What to do if they are happening, and all that kind of stuff. But keep a healthy diet, I guess, is the thing. Like if you think about like a plate, if you just fill it all up, if you fill your dinner plate up with fucking Snickers bars, like that's not a healthy diet, right? But if you had a little bit of dessert, but otherwise a healthy plate, that'd be okay, right? So you need a bit of dessert too sometimes. Maybe not everyone. Maybe some people have crazy discipline, but like you can treat yourself. Now, I wouldn't say reading about horrific things is dessert or a treat or whatever, but it's the same thing in that just as treats can take a toll on you, this negative stuff can take a toll on you. But if you are working it in as part of an overall greater balance, then you should be able to not be brought down too terribly by it. And yeah, I think that's the solution to that. The specific question was, does it make it more pessimistic towards each other? Yeah, sure. But if that is 10 to 15% of your diet and 80 to 90% is focusing on gratitude and meaning and being invited to a church recital, by your new little, 7 and 8 year old friends who like watching you throw a ball to your dog, it ringtone. It's supposed to be on not disturb. Anyway, if you focus on those things, it can be it carries you through the negative thoughts and feelings and desire to go down a bad path where you are pessimistic, nihilistic, really hating everyone, everything, reality, angry at God, whether you believe him or not, just, talking metaphorically here. And that's why I've tried to emphasize in past streams that I thought a gratitude practice was huge. And I was shocked at how deeply it affected my life when I did it after about 2 weeks, right? I think that's the principle on which it works, basically, is shifting your focus so much that you really start to see the world differently, and it allows you to not be brought down. It's not that I don't recognize these things are horrific or sad. I do. It's not comfortable. And if you really are being truly honest about it, like really paying attention, really thinking about it, it should get you down. But you can bring yourself back around if you are well balanced and thinking about not just the things in your life, but all across the world that are good, inspiring. I would make the argument that despite what the news wants us to believe, and all that the majority of people are good. Most of us can walk into a grocery store and not steal and play by the rules, and there's maybe the asshole who doesn't let you out when you need to turn out of a shopping center, but most people usually will let you out. Like we work with one another, we help one another, even those small little things that just make it a kinder, better society. You know, think about how many you could get down about how many children are abused, right? Which, if there's something to bring you down, child abuse is probably one of the big ones. How many aren't, though? How many have parents that, even if they're not perfect, love them? How many are maybe not in an ideal situation? I was a child of divorce. My dad kind of was not doing awesome for a while there. But my mom, and the situation when she left him wasn't awesome. She moved in with my grandparents in their condo. We shared a basement room together for 2 years, she's busting her ass working 2 jobs and then going to night school to make a better life for us. As a 5-year-old, I wasn't comprehending that. I just knew I was with my grandparents a lot for some reason, and I really didn't see my mom too often. But, think about just how many people love their families, take care of their pets, even if they're not the perfect pet owners. They're still feeding their pets and trying to give them a decent life. That they, are decent neighbors. They'll hold the door open for you. If you really look at just all the things across the world, I think the good seriously outweighs the bad. It's just that when things are bad, it can be like really bad. You know, I'm not sure that we have necessarily. There's not often things where we unify and come together on something so good, sadly. It's more that like bad things happen and we have to like fight against it. Right? But then we can get back to our lives. Usually we're not like working towards like what would be the anti or the opposite of like Nazi Germany. You know, usually we're not necessarily working towards whatever the opposite of fucking genocide is. I don't know what the opposite of genocide is. There an opposite? Probably really not. Right? So we can maybe think like, oh, but there's these really big awful things. Are there any like really big good things? But I think it's just more spread out, and I think um, the overall you could argue that the fight against those things, like us going into World War II and fighting against it, was the good thing, I guess, if you wanted to, but war still is awful and horrific. But I think if you just think about the vast quantity of good and decent people and decent things going on in the world, and focus on all your blessings and, you know, try to have meaning in life and all that kind of stuff, that would allow you, despite getting a little pessimistic, or just even feeling sad, even if you're not pessimistic when reading about this stuff and informing yourself, it would carry you. I think that's the answer on that one. At least it has been for me. And I say that not because I'm just like I don't know, this sounds good. That's what it was for me. I was at various points pessimistic and, you know, looking at some of these things, but then also looking at my own life. And, you know, when you're in hell, it's hard to see the good and all that kind of stuff. And I struggled with seeing the beauty or meaning or purpose or fun or joy in life. Like it even after kind of even after separating from my ex, after everything bad that really happened, I was not like, okay, now things are good. Right. Where I'm at today is a three-year process of really, in the beginning, having a negative mindset, where I believe I even talked about this on the last stream yesterday, one of these past two ones, where I was talking about books, where oh, it was the one where I was talking about A Confession by Leo Tolstoy. I was asking myself, what's the point? Not in a sense of like, I am in so much pain right now. Like in this moment, I'm not like rock bottom, I'm not like heartbreak or anything like that. Like I'm like baseline, but I was pessimistic. I was kind of nihilistic about it, to the point where it's like, do I have another like 50 years of just like existing and like this sucks? Because like looking like I finally got out of hell, but like I'm not doing awesome, right? And if I look back at the past majority of my life, like it was not awesome. It was, generally speaking, pretty miserable. So everything I just recommended there was the thought process that, you know, it was starting to shift and look at blessings, and it was starting to shift and think about the good. It was starting, it was coming to terms with God, you know, and a lot of questions about that. And it's funny, I'll tell you my own personal experience of when like the change occurred, and when I flipped from kind of like pessimistic to optimistic, because it all kind of clicked one day. Like I had been doing a lot of these things, I was still not feeling like awesome, but this happened probably, when did this happen? This had to happen when did this happen? I think it was at the beginning of 2020, somewhere in there. Um, there was a Dave Matthews Band song that I always skipped over called Pig, and uh, I skipped it because there was like I had heard it once, and there was like one line that just sounded like a little weird, and I didn't really like it. Uh, so and I'm not like a huge Dave Matthews Band fan, although their drummer Carter Buford is, in my opinion, the best drummer ever. I that dude is phenomenal. So, and I do like a number of their songs and their wine actually. Dreaming Tree, Crush Wine, best $13 fucking wine in existence. Anyway, um, it comes after two of two songs I do like on the Dreaming Tree album. Is that the album? I don't know. Crush and then the Dreaming Tree, which is a song, and then Pig came on, and I just had like these songs. I wanted to listen to those other songs, but then this one autoplayed, and as I'm kind of listening, like I'm picking up some other lyrics, and it's really a song about just kind of seizing the day and um, like just being happy you're alive and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, wait, what is this song about? And I have a hard time knowing what songs are about unless I pull up the lyrics and read them. Like there's a few artists where I can get it. Billy Joel, Eminem, Elton John. Um, there's a few other songs that are so straightforward that you can hear the lyrics and everything. But if they get poetic whatsoever, like, and especially if the artist is like truly singing rather than just speaking, you know, um, it can be hard for me to really grasp what's going on. The vocals almost just sound like another instrument. They're just notes rather than words. And especially being a drummer, like I listen to the beat first. Like I hear the drums before anything else. Like, and I just how my brain works. Anyway, I pulled up the lyrics and I saw what it was about. It was about all those things, and I don't know, everything just kind of snapped that day, and kind of from then on, I nearly thought about getting some of the lyrics, I was about to say engraved, tattooed on myself, and I decided against it because it just none of the lyrics stuck out that much to me to that they were more important than other lyrics that I intend to get on this arm very soon. But it's still that was a bit of my own journey with this exact thing about dealing with pessimism, uh, having to look at this stuff because I didn't just look at this stuff because I wanted to not be naive or uninformed as far as like the world and politics or anything like that. I had to look at this stuff to examine, to understand, to truly grasp and understand and integrate into myself how someone could betray me as badly as my ex did. Because I could not believe that someone could do that prior to that. Like I could not, like I knew that there were, again, pick your trigger warning, but murdering someone else, like because you mug them on the street and something goes wrong and you wind up shooting them and stealing their wallet or something, right? Like that's awful, and there's a level of hell for that one as far as the Dante's Inferno levels of hell, right? But the betrayers, when you have someone's trust and you stab them in the back, that is at the very, very bottom next to Satan himself. It was such an unbelievably evil and cruel thing, and not even necessarily purposely, but in some cases purposely. But it was so complicated, so complex. You can't get past trauma and grief unless you can understand that these levels of like malevolence and evil and bad exist or can exist, in my opinion. So some of this research was grappling and wrestling with and trying to understand what happened to me in my own life. And some of you watching this, if you're interested in what I'm saying, because I talk about trauma and grief recovery, that's another added layer to why I'm recommending a book like Man's Search for Meaning. Or the Gulag Archipelago or something like that. But I do think try to have a healthy balance. Try care about your own mental health. I'm about to talk about another book, and one of the things is and get it exactly correct here. Treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. So, yeah, love yourself like your life depends on it, just like that other book. Keep it balanced. If you feel yourself getting too pessimistic, take a break. You know, try to be informed. Try to understand. Try to know. Try to be not naive, but don't ruin your mental health in the process. And try to use some of those other techniques I was talking about: gratitude, just thinking about all the good things in the world. In fact, there's a website out there. Let's see if I can find it. Which one is it here? Well, apparently, I just Googled Good News website and I found two of them. This one's Positive News. What went right this week? You know? Just... And then goodnewsnetwork.org. There are websites out there that actually do talk about the good shit happening in the world. So if you ever need a reminder, if, you know, the local news has told you about all the awful things going on, how there's shooting and all that kind of shit, and it's scaring the shit out of us. And the problem is, I'm not making light of any of these things, but because we are all so interconnected in the internet, we know what's going on in Minneapolis or Indianapolis or Nashville or whatever. There's a bad thing happening everywhere, and it makes it seem like this is happening way more often than it really is. But when you look, you know, again, kind of like per person, as far as, you know, okay, how many people that day were safe and had a neighbor help them, or someone opened the door for them, or had a decent day at work and their coworkers were nice to them, and or even if they weren't nice, they weren't total legit assholes to them who whipped out a gun and shot them. You know, like, it's so easy to find a few bad things that happened across all of America in a nation with 330 plus million people in it, or the world for that matter. With, like, something bad happened in the world right now in the past 10 seconds, guaranteed. Right? And we could probably find it on the internet somewhere eventually once it gets recorded. There's no shortage of it because there's 9 billion people. Right? But let's say even 1 million. Let's say 1 million people today had something bad happen to them across the entire world. Right? That's still 8,999,000,000 that didn't. You know, I know that number's bigger, but you get the point I'm making here. Like, obviously there's people in poverty. Not everyone has, but I'm just saying, like, they weren't. Hopefully, less than 1 million people were, like, shot or killed or trigger warning, whatever. You know what I'm saying? So these websites are actually pretty decent. If you really care about your mental health, try looking at this shit sometimes instead of just what your enemy political party did recently. All right, I like that question. I didn't know I was gonna go off about that in all those different directions. It was kind of fun. Thank you. Holy shit, we're an hour and a half in. And unfortunately, tonight is not a night I can stick around, because those of you who play Nexus know I have to host a Carnage. So, this next one, I can't believe it's actually... What would be the word? Controversial whatsoever. And I can't believe the author is controversial. I could see him having critiques. And I thought long and hard about if I even wanted to put this one up, because there's such a knee-jerk reaction among some people to just be completely dismissive if this person or book is even mentioned. But it wouldn't be true and honest if I didn't, because this person and book had a massive impact on my life as well. Jordan B. Peterson's, Dr. Jordan B. Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. This book is distilled down from 42 Rules for Life, which was a post made on Quora by the author. This person has hours and hours and hours and hours of lectures on YouTube. They are controversial because they have studied the atrocities of the 20th century, like I was just talking about, and they were driven to do so because they were like, how did we let this happen? How do we not ever allow this to happen again? They're Canadian. There was a bill that was suggesting that you need to call trans people by their preferred pronouns. You must do it, which, in the author's opinion, as well as my own, is infringing on free speech. You can't tell me I have to say or tell you something. Controlling speech is controlling thought, because when we speak, we're actually thinking. The same as when we write something down in our journal, we're actually thinking. This is how populations begin to be controlled by governments. Whether or not the government is actually doing that by forcing people to use pronouns is besides the point. For me, having freedom as my top value, I just don't believe you infringe on free speech no matter what the case is, and that was this person's point. But they weren't saying that you should dislike trans people or anything like that. It was a free speech case, not a no pronouns are stupid case. That's not the point. Since then, a lot of people have gone after him for thinking his advice is very basic, banal, and words like that. I think that the fact that he has helped millions of people and has 43,000 ratings with 86% 5-star, 8% 4-star, which means he's at 94% positive, says something. And interestingly, I said, or I read this top review, the most influential book I've ever read this year, from a liberal. Apparently this person didn't know he was controversial, and they even said I'm not supposed to be one of his target audience. Apparently a lot of people on my side dislike this guy, but this is it's hard to argue with a lot of what he's saying. Maybe you disagree with everything, but some of the things he's saying as far as the rules are treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. Well, most of us will give medication to our pets more than we will ourselves, right? Well, why would we do that? Why aren't we taking the medication ourselves? Like, we care for our pet or a loved one. Well, take care of yourself, right? And I've talked about the 3 duties as far as being a merchant on the game I and many of us play, Nexus. Duty to self, duty to path, duty to community. Taking care of yourself is super, super important, and that was an argument made in this book. Talked about pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. Make friends with people who want the best for you. Like, these aren't really ideas that should necessarily be controversial or shocking. People can go look up the critiques of him elsewhere about certain things he said. Do I think that everything he has ever said is, yes, that's correct and all that kind of stuff? No, but we should be able to think and critique and have nuance and be like, okay, again, like most other things, let's say 90 or 95% of what's being said is like, yeah, this is all good information. And the other 5%, no, I disagree with that, or ooh, I don't like that at all. That doesn't invalidate the 90 or 95%, in my opinion. Uh, if I'm being actually totally honest, I just bought tickets. He just announced a world tour, and I just bought tickets today, since they were announced yesterday, to see him when he comes here on April 28th. If you are if you are high in openness, trait openness, which means you're actually typically more liberal leaning. The truth is, if you're more creative, artistic, usually those are kinds of traits associated with this. Not always, but just kind of generally. Basically, if you're someone who might be someone high in agree or openness would be like, yeah, I'll try acid. You know, someone low in openness would be like, get that shit away from me. Like, what the fuck? You know? Typically speaking, people who are higher in trait openness, a more Jungian, mythological, big picture, weaving together of these kinds of things works really well to help them understand the universe, get past their suffering, to grasp onto meaning, all those kinds of things. If you are someone low in openness, and while this is not the only predictor, it's a chance that you might be a little more conservative. You are not interested in taking risks. You don't want to explore the world or travel that much. Whether you are currently or not, you don't even have an interest. Like, nope, I want my meat and potatoes, and I just want to go to work at my office job and come home and watch my sports, favorite team, and I do what is normal according to society, and I, generally follow the rules and all that kind of stuff, and I'm not interested in experimenting or trying new things or society trying new things, because what we have works. Some of this might not land as hard, and also the way he is saying it might not land as hard, because he does bring in a significant amount of mythology and Jungian thought and all that kind of stuff. He's really talking about, a lot of ancient creation myths and things like this to explain some really interesting kind of deep truths about humans and how that applies and why it matters as you go through life. I think for me, why his work in general has been so paradigm shifting was it really outlined all the why I was where I was and what to do to change it and get out of it. And if you've listened to my stream regularly over the past, I'm over a dozen now of streams, it should come as no surprise that I have read this book and would recommend it. And especially if you know anything about his work, a lot of it is more than anyone else. Some of his ideas are probably laced through what I'm saying. Not that they're originally his ideas, but it's stuff that he is talking about pretty regularly. Talking about if you want to change the world, the way to do that is to fix yourself and become a better person. I'm not saying that there's not a time to do a march. I greatly respect Dr. Martin Luther King. But what he did, he had himself put together. That man was intelligent, he had his life in order, and he had a meaning and a purpose. If he was just some random dude who got pissed off and started rioting and or marching or turned into a riot, or even if he didn't riot along with them. Um, really, my music player just decided it was going to update in the middle of this. All right, that's cool. Hey, we do that, music player. I wasn't streaming or anything. Let's try to turn that back on. Um, if MLK was not who he was, he would not be able to have the impact that he had. If he was just some dude, right? No one would have listened to him. But because he had his shit together, he was intelligent, he was thoughtful, he thought through all this kind of stuff. I'm not saying I even necessarily agreed with everything that the guy believed, but you can't argue at the end of the day the main message of what he was saying. At least I don't think you can. I know there are other people who think you can. I disagree strongly with them. And I think, you know, again, one of the rules, set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. You know, so many people think they have all the answers to fix the economy and shit, and, like, they can't get their own shit together. How is it that you can fix America, but you can't fix, like, the mess that is your bedroom? He's making a good point there. I don't know. You know, like, maybe you should have your shit together and are doing well, and then you might be capable of beginning to understand other stuff. And I'm not saying that people aren't entitled to their political opinions or to vote or anything like that, even though I'm becoming more and more convinced that people shouldn't vote before they're 40. And I'm not 40 yet. I say that jokingly, but not at the same time, because I know how stupid I was. I know how stupid I still am, to be fair. So, much less 27 or 26, 25, 24, 18. All the way to 18, right? But you gotta start being able to vote somewhere, I suppose. But I think he outlines taking responsibility. I think he outlines some really, truly deep... It's not just like, here's what you should do. It is traced back to truly kind of archetypal truths and ideas that most of us know, and our deepest myths, and these things that resonate with us, and we don't even know why they resonate with us, and he kind of explains out why they even resonate with us. And the thing is, archetypes are like, we all, you could say mother or father. If you thought about the ideal father, you would have a picture in your head of what that kind of person would be like. And these are things that it seems we know even without having to learn them through social conditioning. It seems embedded in us. And if that's the case, that means there's kind of, and it seems like some morality and stuff is even embedded in us. Whether you believe that's the product of evolution or a greater, a God out there who is like, well, this is what morality is. And that's a different argument. It doesn't matter. It still seems to exist. And out of that, we can learn things about, you know, maybe stuff we should be doing to take ourselves out of hell and to not hell. And that was the case for me, at least. Getting out of hell, and a lot of the things I preach about how to not be in hell are from information I learned from him and others, and all these other books that I'm talking about, and implementing it in my life. And I'm just trying to pass along the good news, because after 32-ish years of hell, or let's say 30, because I've been doing okay for a while now, this is working. And it seems like when I talk to people who watch this and who do the things I talk about, when I give recommendations, like, you should read this book, you should check this out, you should do these exercises, you should do that, I'm hearing positive feedback, like, yeah, this is all working. So I feel like I'm kind of, based on my own experience as well as many others. And it's not just mine. When I say a gratitude practice, it's like, well, dude, it's not just me or people I know, their immediate experiences. It's like there's tons of no one is going online and saying like, gratitude practice, man, that wound up really fucking me over. Like no one has ever said it was a bad time to like look around and think about the things you're grateful for, or that it had negative effects on them. So, um, yeah, I think this book is worth a read for most people. I think there's a reason that it has a 94%-ish positive rating on Amazon, with the vast majority of them being 5 stars. I think if you are not caught up, there's a lot of hit pieces on this guy that, uh, and I've read them where, and I've watched enough of his material to know that they were hit pieces and that they were misinterpreting what they were saying. If anyone's watching this and is aware of him and just has a bad taste in my mouth that I'm even bringing him up, I would say that I just I don't think that a lot of the criticisms are fair. Some are. I think the vast majority are not. I think his words are twisted. I think clips are taken out of context. He's talking about such big ideas that if you take a 15-second clip, it can be super easy to misinterpret what he's saying, or to twist it so that people are against him. So, you know, with that said, this book, it's not the easiest read. It's very big and very deep. You need to, it 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 gets deep. It is a very heavy book in the sense of just how deep he's going. But 12 Rules for Life, the subtitle is An Antidote to Chaos. And I think that's true. When you are finding yourself in a bad spot, if you're watching this and you're finding yourself in a spot where it's like, dude, life sucks, or things are not going right, or it could be better, or whatever else, a lot of the stuff in here, one of the rules, tell the truth or at least don't lie. I've talked about on the stream that I took a vow to not lie, cheat, or steal. And he outlined on a very deep level the importance of truth. And I decided to take that seriously, and I applied it to my life. And I can tell you that, like, I'm not saying that there hasn't been without bumps. Even tonight, I told someone the truth that I fucking hated it. I fucking hated it. I didn't want to say what the truth was because I knew it was gonna be painful for people involved. And it was. But if I lied, it would be even worse. If I held back, it'd kind of be effectively lying because I had something to say. And generally speaking, I'm not saying that every single thing that I go through is easy, because I tell the truth, but things work out way better if you do. Way better if you tell the truth. In, like, basically every circumstance. I've outlined some, again, if I was hiding Jews in Nazi Germany and a Nazi came along and asked me if I had Jews, I would say, no, I'm not hiding Jews. That would be the correct answer. That's an okay lie. You really don't want to, it's very easy to get caught away with excuses for lying, and that's why people do it. And you want to avoid that at all costs. You really, lying should be damn near life or death. It could also be used to protect information where people are trying to use your integrity against you. In those cases, it's all right. And again, like, I am very, very specific and particular about that. And more often than not, I'll even say things sometimes that I wish I didn't. You have to have a bit of a strong internal compass on this, which I think you develop by doing a lot of the stuff that I talk about on this stream. And also I would keep a surprise birthday party hidden from someone. That's something I lie about. But you know, taking a lot of this information and really applying it to my life and building a life philosophy out of it. And again, not just this book, but Stoicism, being more assertive and saying no. Um, so many other things. I mean, I feel like my entire operating system was fucked before, and it led me to hell. And so I had to rebuild a complete new one. And I would say, truly, more than anything else, the work of this man is the foundation for what I'm talking about right now. And so, if you want to read more or learn more, I would strongly recommend his lectures on YouTube, as well as this book. He also came out with another book, which is Beyond Order: 12 More Rules for Life, and he's got another one coming out soon. He has a lecture from, I believe it was 2014 or 2016, somewhere in there, called Maps of Meaning on YouTube. It's a 12-part lecture series. Each lecture is like 3 hours long. That was life-changing. He also did another one where he covered the book of Genesis, which was also blew my mind about what the wisdom contained in the Bible. Strongly recommend this book. I don't know if I strongly recommend this book over some others. Even I would say his work. I think the lectures are probably better. The book is kind of a culmination of a lot of what he goes over in his lectures. And just as a side note, before he was controversial, first off, he worked at the University of Toronto, and prior to that, Harvard. University of Toronto is the best college in Canada. And second off, he was routinely rated as like the professor whose like course was the most impactful or life-changing by all of the students, well before he became controversial over the Bill C-16 thing. So he wasn't controversial whatsoever before that, and a lot of this information wasn't controversial before that. And then all of a sudden, because some people took what he was saying the wrong way about what he was arguing, now everyone jumps on his back and is like, oh, let's pick apart what he's saying here and try to paint him as this evil villain, which is just bullshit. So, that, again, I don't know if I think the book itself wasn't paradigm shifting for me because I had already known it all when I read it, because I had watched so much of this material. But if you hadn't, I think the book, or if I hadn't, the book probably would have been the number one book on this list, if I'm being honest. So, we only have 7 minutes left, and I have a lot more books to go through. There's a few on here that I don't think I really need to go through, but I do want to go through this guy's. Robert A. Johnson is a noted lecturer and Jungian analyst. He's the author of all these books. Owning Your Own Shadow, if you want to do shadow work. Inner Work, He, She, and We are all very good books. Inner Goal, Transformation, The Fisher King and the Handless Maiden. I have read most of the books that are on here, that are right here along this top section. Again, if you are high in openness and you're into myths and some of these, like, if that kind of stuff appeals to you to learn lessons, like deep wisdom coming out of myths and stories and things like that and what they can teach us, this will be right up your alley and you will learn some crazy shit. These books are not very long. In fact, most of them are under 100 pages, I believe. And some of them didn't even tell me things that I necessarily wanted to hear. We, for example, the end result of what the guy was saying, I was like, ooh, this actually isn't the thing I wanted to hear about relationships. Although he had damn good points, and it made me come around and have a bigger picture of what relationships are, I would say. Again, if you're not into Jungian ideas and myths and archetypes and all that kind of stuff, if you're low in openness, if you're super conservative, these books will probably just be a bunch of bullshit to you. You won't see a whole lot away from it. But when you read the reviews for these books from anyone who it does fit the bill for, you will the amount of wisdom this dude packs into like 100 pages, because again, these books are not super long. He takes one topic and he like focuses on it, and like it has a lot of clarity and explains the myth and explains what it's saying and how it applies to you and all that, and it's like boom, done. um it it is there was some profound shit. I got on a kick when I first found these books. Like after the first one, I basically just had to keep reading. Like whatever it was, I just wanted to read what he was saying because it was so deep and so profound to me. Um, that's how my mind works. That's I am trying to like wrestle and grapple with extremely big ideas and see how they all fit together, and come up with like a universal philosophy. Uh, if you and I'm a very big picture thinker. I am connecting dots, from things. I'm constantly making connections and all that kind of stuff. If you are a more linear thinker, this might not be up your alley either. If you're into MBTI, basically, if you're high like an N, like INFP or an INTJ or an ENTJ or something like that, this will probably appeal to you. If you're an S, so ISFP, ISTJ, whatever, or ESTJ, this will probably not be up your alley. You probably be like, this is just a bunch of like nonsense, like there's nothing concrete about this. We're talking about big, vague, weird kind of ideas and stuff like that. I just want just the facts. Give me the facts, and you're not going to get that from these books. So if you're that kind of person, don't read these. If you're the kind of person who's like, S type, linear thinker, uh, not into low in openness, things like that, I don't think these books are going to have really any impact. In fact, you'll probably just get frustrated reading it. It's possible that that's not the case. Everyone's different, but I would think, generally speaking, that would be the case. If you are high in openness, if what I'm saying is resonating as far as these big picture ideas, as far as mythology, all that kind of stuff goes, you should just pick the book that appeals the most. Uh, he or she would be a good start, because that will, understanding feminine psychology versus understanding masculine psychology if you are in a relationship. We understanding the psychology of romantic love. I got a lot out of the Fisher King story. The Fisher King story is an Arthurian legend, and it's what he is talking about in that book, The Fisher King for males and The Handless Maiden for females, is talking about the wounded feeling function. Again, if you're Jungian, and although Jung didn't endorse MBTI, but it was kind of based on some of his ideas, there are different functions of how we think and operate. And basically, both males and females, if you have like a wounded feeling function, it will affect how you move through life. And that there was some big takeaways from me there, essentially. So if you kind of had like an original wound in childhood that kind of fucked you up a little bit regarding being a man or a woman, there may be some answers in there for you, again, if you fit the criteria that I just laid out before. I think his work is incredibly um, I don't know. It's astounding how much wisdom this dude is packing into like 100 pages. It's like I read these books, and like I was just like having revelation after revelation after revelation of like new understandings of how at least I operated, because it aligned with how I think about things. Um, Ecstasy is another one that I read. Inner work. what else? Again, she, we, yeah, I don't know what's up with some of these other ones. Security policies and implementation issues is definitely not him. And I don't know what's up with this. Yeah, these are like models. I guess they're not models; they're paperback. But he wasn't writing any like Nazi Germany books or anything like that. He's strictly Jungian. The Golden World. I haven't. Our search for meaning, fulfillment, and divine. Damn, $65.99 for the audio CD. I haven't listened to that one. I can tell you that, but that was interesting right there. Inner Gold is another good one. Yeah, I recommend it. If you fit the bill, this guy's work is revelatory. If you don't fit the bill, you will probably just think it's a bunch of I don't know, fluffy bullshit nonsense. Probably. If you're the kind of person who looks at self-development and you know, there's like those spiritual gurus and you think they're a whole bunch of bullshit, which a lot of them are, to be fair. Um, this stuff's probably not for you either. So, all right. The other books, I don't know if I'll get into. I put them on there. They were like the last books I really cared about to bring up, but I don't know that they might be useful, and I might bring them up some other day. I don't think I'm going to do a whole thing about them um, on the next stream next week when we come back. I think this week was a good series. You know, 3 streams all talking about books. Um, but other than that, uh, yeah, I don't. I'll probably weave those in elsewhere in other streams, maybe. So, I don't know what exactly is going on next week yet. If anyone has ideas, feel free to DM me or something. I'd really like to just answer a lot more questions from people. I don't intend to be monologuing this whole time. So if you have questions, speak up. Maybe I can do like Ask Me Anything next week. Maybe some people will actually chat and ask. Be interesting. So anyway. Wow, you moved. People want to see you, dude. You're the star, not me. What are you doing over there? Thank you. I have their surrender experiment, man, search for meaning. And when I say I know, feel guilty in my Amazon cart. Awesome. Yeah, all those, especially. I'm trying to think, just because I know a little bit about you and we've talked before. I think the surrender experiment's going to be one that you're going to like. So, I mean, I think you'll like all of them, and whatever one stuck out to you as I talked about them all. You know, it was the ones I would recommend that people get. So if those are your 3, awesome. But you in particular, I think, especially because I know you're into Buddhism, I think the surrender experiment will speak to you. That's where I'm drawing that conclusion from. So, I got 10 minutes before I got to go open doors. Every Nexus player knew what I was talking about. Everyone else is like, what the fuck are you talking about? I am gonna go let over and out real fast, get the doors, and I will be back Tuesday of next week. Hopefully with some real improvements on the stream, actually. I just bought a new camera, like an actual camera, not a webcam, and a number of other upgrades. So, and some of those have been, you know, you notice that the chat is no longer being spammed with the music thing, because I paid for that, so it wasn't getting spammed, and there should be a lot more music being played now, some more variety. The noise, I have an AC going 4 feet away from me, and I don't think anyone hears it right now. So that software, so yeah, hopefully things are getting better. If there's any feedback I can get from anyone about ways to make this thing even more better, that would be awesome. So I'm gonna go. If you haven't followed me and you watch this and you like it, please do. Please join our Discord too. We're talking in there a little bit, and I'm gonna be talking a lot more and putting up stuff hopefully in the next few weeks as I get some of the final things of the stream and social media profiles and all that kind of figured out. But yeah, time for me to go. Hope you all have a wonderful night, weekend, etc. And I'll see you all next week.